we are not over the pandemic. We are over not when I say over, that doesn't mean, Neil, that it might not return. Currently, we're not in that very fulminant phase where we're getting 900,000 cases a day, tens of thousands of hospitalizations per day, and about 3,000 deaths per day. We're not there now. We're much better off for a number of reasons. Although we're seeing an increase in cases, we're averaging about 100,000 now. The differential between the number of cases and the number of hospitalizations and deaths indicate that the ratio of hospitalizations and deaths to cases is much lower now than it was with Delta, which means maybe people, and they are certainly getting infected, but the severity of the disease leading to hospitalizations and deaths proportionately is much lower. And I think people get confused when you say, is it ended or is it not? We still have a pandemic. We hope to be in a situation, hopefully soon, where the level of control based on all of the mitigations we have, vaccinations, boosters, treatment for people who are infected, the ability to make a decision whether you want to go the extra step of testing before you go to a particular venue. All of those things, if implemented properly, should keep the level very low of where we want to be so that it doesn't disrupt us the way it has literally over the past 2.5 years.
Я вам скажу компетентно, абсолютно, что на уничтожение всего восточного побережья Соединенных Штатов нужно 2 ракеты «Сармат». 2! Точно столько же и на Западе. 4 ракеты. Все, там не будет ничего. Не надо рассказывать, что вот этот гриб будет выше небоскреба. Он будет виден из Мексики у вас, этот гриб. Вы что, ребят, смешные такие. Да, они чем пользуются вообще? Вопрос в другом, что они доводят, они пытаются довести до всего, да? Повышают ставки. Повышают. А мы что, должны сказать? Ой, не, ни в коем случае только нет. Ну так что ли, или что? Вы собираетесь, если мы не будем,
мы должны не вестись,
говоря простым мы языком. Не ведемся, мы просто им объясняем, что, ребят, вы неправильно считаете. Считать надо вот так, а не по-другому. Не надо себя в иллюзии тешить. Ничего там не будет. Вот что надо говорить, объяснять. Никто это, так сказать, никаких иллюзий не питает.
I can't rhyme.
Hello and welcome to News from the Pew, where we I love my pipe. Where we talk about all the subjects of the day with 3 gentlemen that I would absolutely elevate to the position of Cardinal if I had the choice. We have our man Steve Cunningham from
Speak for yourself.
You said it, my show. Shut your mouth. We have our man Steve Cunningham from Sensus Fidelium. We have the man, the myth, the legend, who will be taking on a Protestant hip hop artist in the coming month, Mr. Enoch himself, Waziazi. And we are graced by the man in the 3-piece suit while he's shearing sheep, Mr. Ryan Grant from Mediatrix Press. Well, good afternoon, gentlemen. You can take an afternoon back. It's fine.
Afternoon.
It's okay. I feel like a teacher on the first day of school.
What would it be like Fox? It's like a 5-hour delay before you get the response back.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, because we're broadcasting to the moon and back, apparently,
Yes.
because that's how long it takes. But yes, we are happy to be back here on News from the Pew. And we're going to get right into it. Happy month of the Sacred Heart of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. None of this pride nonsense, or as I like to call it, Happy Monkeypox Month, if you really want to get to it with these type of people.
And we're banned.
And I don't care. I don't really care. And if that didn't help, we're also on Rumble and all the other ones, so I'm not really too concerned about it.
We're going to talk about the monkey. Let's bring him in.
I'm going to bring him in, our monkeypox correspondent. I don't have a name for you, so you're just going to have to roll with that.
George.
Yeah, so obviously it's a tired topic in conservative and Catholic and anybody who's not bat poop insane circles, that this is the month where every corporate entity out there will now switch to, I don't even know what the flag is at this point. It's got like 75 different colors, symbols, and it's like you have to put a seizure warning on it before you look at it. And it's being flown everywhere, and at the Vatican, in Lithuania, and all these other places.
Not in the Middle East.
No, well, not the State Department. That's why the State Department, I actually think, tried it in Kabul. I don't know how long that lasted, but they definitely did try it. We're going to get to that in a minute, Ryan, right there. So, gentlemen, have you changed? Obviously, Steve, you've changed Sensus Fidelium's logo to the rainbow flag to correspond with Pride Month, correct?
It's kind of funny. The letter B stands for bi to a group of people that think there's 600 some odd genders, or there's no gender.
Say something with my last name there, buddy? Are you trying to infer something?
Don't they have to take the B out? So if they get rid of that thing, or would they have to change their emblem or something, or get the line out? Or
who cares? That's all I care about. I mean, that they're all confused anyway.
We're all confused. I'm confused.
Yeah, exactly. So, Fawaz, have you? I know you put out a recent song for pro-life. Are you going to have an LGBT MAP song coming out in the near future?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to be featuring James Martin himself. It's going to be great.
And we know Mediatric Press, you guys are all about the LGBT MAP mafia. I'm sure you have books galore ready to come out to celebrate the month of.
We have actually, to celebrate the month of June, we do have.
Correct.
The month of the Sacred Heart. I still have coming in, but playing through those.
Excellent. Which is really, when you talk about the fact that they use the month of June for quote unquote one of the 7 deadly sins, and then of course it really is sad to watch, because these people who clearly, no matter what part they identify with, they're all suffering some kind of personality disorder, some kind of mental illness. And the fact that they need to be reaffirmed by big corporate to validate this terrible lifestyle it's just something that we have to endure completely. And it's one of those things that we don't want to have to actually deal with, but unfortunately, because we live in a fallen world. So once again, happy month of the Sacred Heart to all that are watching in that regard. So
I put a post up the other day on that. I just thought about that. It was a good solution to break off from it, is get away from all these corporations. Don't want to be like all anti-corporation-y and all that like it lives. But no, it's you think locally, act locally. You get just like the eggs. Glenn Beck had a thing on the other day that he heard that eggs were going to be like up to $1 an egg, or you get a dozen for $12, whatever. Hey, what's the solution? I guarantee Enoch and Ryan has that in their backyards with chickens. So if you got chickens in your backyard, guess what those eggs don't cost? They don't cost $12 a gallon.
No, we get about a dozen a day.
And definitely don't cost $12 a gallon. I'll tell you that much. That's just gasoline. In that regard. Well, I mean, it's $8 a gallon in California at this point.
Yeah, Pasadena.
It's about $4.60, $4.70 here in Idaho.
It's still hovering at $4 something around here in Texas. So
yeah, we're $4.30, $4.20, $4.30 here.
We'll be at $5. What do you guys? What do you got, Fawaz?
About the same as Steve.
I guarantee it'll be $5 by August.
If it was $8, I think there'd be a lot more people with their weapons of war in this area.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment, because that's a great transition, Steve. Thank you. We'll go with that one. This was Yeah, that's right. That's why you're the ringleader. This is kind of a late edition, but tonight at 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern, which means it's being filmed now. It's not going to be live. Old Joey's going to stumble in front of a teleprompter and talk about the latest attempt by Congress. I think he's going to slip some executive orders in there, to be honest, regarding gun control in reaction to Buffalo and Uvalde and the shooting that happened in Tulsa, which ironically enough, everybody started to cover because it was a black guy with an AR-15. Any other month or any other time, it would have kind of been memory hold, but since it helps perform the narrative, and so as we approach this, we're going to have Roe most likely being struck down because it didn't come out this week. Because I know not your source was telling that it was supposed to come out this week.
Yeah, Judge Knapp said the May 31st, and then he came out with a video after we got done and said the end of June.
Yeah, so we're going to see two issues. The two primary issues that would cause division, guns and abortion, are going to be addressed within the next month. Because they're going to be coming after guns. There's this video of this psychotic representative from New York, but I repeat myself, talking about, well, if you guys don't allow it, we'll just executive order it. If the Supreme Court strikes it down, we'll expand the Supreme Court. We're coming for your guns no matter what. We're taking the weapons of war off the street. So we're looking at within, and I don't want to be one of these Alex Jones guys, like, that's happening now. But you're looking at issues. The two primary issues that can get people riled up are coming to a head in the next month. And I don't know, Fwaz, where do we go from there with both of those, with abortion being outlawed? Because I know there are blue cities here in Texas, I'm sure in Kentucky and other places that are like, well, we're not enforcing the abortion ban. We're going to let them continue that and continuing with the idea of taking guns off of the street. How's it look for these United States going forward there, Fwaz?
Well, we're as divided as we can be, and it's just going to continue to divide us even more. There's no reconciling the country anymore, I don't think. You've got people who are just an extreme. I mean, I can't think of a single thing that we could all agree on, to be honest with you. It used to be protect children and don't molest them, and nowadays you got people fighting for pedophiles. So there's no reconciling anymore, I don't think, bar from some act of God and some miracle by the grace of God. I got a butterfly here. So, yeah, it's going to continue to drive the division even more. It's one of those things to where, look, striking down Roe v. Wade is great. I know Kentucky is a trigger state, which means as soon as the Supreme Court strikes it down, it'll be illegal to have an abortion. There's only one abortion clinic here. It's in Louisville. That's going to shut down their operations there. They do other things for women. It's funny. It's like, they do mammograms and all the other stuff, but they also kill babies at the same time. So that's going to be shut down here. The red states are going to continue to do what they're doing, and the blue states, California is going to be the sanctuary abortion state of the country. But as far as the whole gun control thing goes, the right and the conservatives and traditionalists, whatever you want to call them, unfortunately, the left has this ability to control narrative that we don't. We're fighting in other ways, but Chicago has the most restrictions in the whole country, and they have the most crime committed by guns. And so it goes to show you it's not working, especially when it comes to school. We talked about last week what our solution is to have maybe veterans who are armed right out of retirement to protect kids, give them a sense of purpose, and to give them, to protect children, and also to drop in a bucket for our national budget to get those guys out there. But they don't want that kind of solution. No, they want to keep pushing their own agenda if you take guns away from citizens, it makes it easier for the powers that should not be to come after their own citizens. So expanding the court is going to be a little bit more difficult. We'll see what happens with the midterms. I don't have my hopes up with McConnell and McCarthy unless some miracle happens and we get some good guys in there who understand how to do these things. It's at this point, it's just pray and fast and wait and see what happens, because none of us are in a position to do what we need to do, other than the fact that to stay in the state of grace and protect our families. And Biden is going to keep yapping. We all know who's really behind this. This is Obama's third term. But yeah, so we'll see what happens after these speaks. Executive orders are fine and dandy until there's another president who comes in 2024 who can just knock those out like he did with Trump's agenda. Going to be back and forth between the right and left, I guess, at this point.
Exactly. And that's the problem with the system. This system, people don't realize that the U.S. Constitution and our federal system was not set up for a two-party system. It was set up for independence, essentially. The first president, George Washington, was independent. You look at his farewell speech, he decried the idea of political systems because you just have this back and forth nonsense. Ryan, your thoughts on both Roe getting struck down and the division that causes with blue states, which will become sanctuary states. Austin's already put something on the table here in Texas. And then your thoughts on Joe Biden using and the Democrats finally finding an issue. It wasn't abortion because nobody cared about that. It was a collective meh when Roe announced it was going to get struck down. They got to distract from food. They got to distract from gas. They got to distract from all these things. So they're going back to the one thing that just happens to have a couple shootings in the last month that they're highlighting. Of course, the dead we mourn. But now they're highlighting those shootings again, and they're starting to get some momentum to try and get something done. Your thoughts on on those two issues coming to a head?
Yeah, I think with Roe, it initially, I think Roe could have, continued to be divisive if the media was going to play it up. But I think that they just saw they didn't have the groundswell of support they thought they would have. And so, because a lot of people really are, obviously with the universities and the blue states, people are going to freak out about, the whole concept of abortion. But then most people stopped and realized, well, hey, that's not going to change in California. That's not going to change in New England. So, let's, we'll just get around that. Right. And so you did have interestingly with that, serious enough threats at Supreme Court justices' houses that you have to deploy the Secret Service there. Right. But that's not an insurrection. No, I'm sorry. Basically, domestic terrorism that's going to prevent the Supreme Court from issuing a judgment on law that they see as, and we don't even know what actually is yet either. It might not actually be. It's just leaked that it supposedly will overturn Roe versus Wade. But just that alone, it's a federal crime. But then the Psaki's out there. Oh, don't worry about it. We support people's rights to protest. Okay, yeah, and commit federal crimes and terrorism. Yes, as long as it's for the thing that the administration thinks is okay. And that's really what you're seeing. Whereas, again, your date that appears after the 5th and before the 7th of January, there's people there that it's not even known if they actually committed a crime, but they're still in indefinite detention. And they still run around acting as if this is this horrible insurrection when, well, at the very worst, a bunch of misfits. Some of them got in fights with cops. Others led around between the ropes by cops and I don't know, it grabbed a podium and smiled for a picture, and Viking David Crockett guy, smiling at the podium. It's like, come on, seriously, this is an insurrection, and not even a single armed person there either, right? But which again brings us to the current gun control narrative. Oh, these things are so dangerous. Wait a minute, let's go back a little bit. Doesn't anybody remember Biden essentially saying, well, you can't overthrow the government with an AR-15. Why, you need your own nukes and tanks and things like that. So you don't think you need guns to fight the government. Well, so we don't have sufficiently military enough weapons to overthrow the government, yet these are weapons of war that all have to be gotten out. And it plays so much to the ignorance that liberals have of guns, but even people who support gun use generally, unless they own them and use them, tend to be somewhat ignorant of them. Myself, I know how to safely use and operate, clean, take apart, reassemble just about every firearm I own. But, the things outside of my own experience, I really don't know much about them. So, anything built in an AR platform, I can pick up and use, right? But, because we know how that goes because we use guns and we operate them safely. But most people don't. So you look at something like an AR. Oh, my goodness, it looks like an M16. What am I going to do? really, unless I do something illegal to this gun, I don't have anything over a pistol except for range and not even capacity, because you can get 30 round magazines for pistols. I've seen some of those, kind of gnarly looking, not terribly practical, and they probably jam a bunch.
Well, anything outside the Glock,
Yeah.
33 round one, but don't be getting a high point one. That'll be terrible.
Exactly. So the gun control narrative, it has been seeded. It's there. It's ready. They're going to push that. And that's one of the issues that I think it's not even as much of a distraction. It's going to serve as a distraction, but it's also something that's necessary, because who's going to go out and enforce various restrictions on an armed populace? And that's something I think they are really worried about. Why did the COVID volunteers or whatever your Hitler Youth that they wanted to put out there as vaccine pushers going around to every single door, right? That never, they did have it in some areas, but it never germinated around here, right? And I'm sure a lot of places in Texas, it did not germinate because everyone's got guns and people are probably legitimately scared what's going to happen. Yeah. So, that's something, especially if they're going to try to force certain medications next time around, who knows? Then, that's something legitimately they're going to have to deal with. Anything that involves that personal contact. Yeah, they can try to starve you out, but eventually there's going to be a point where they have to come in. And when they come in, they can only take so many losses before they start to have a problem. So that's, I think, where they preempt that. They really do want to move on restrictions. Plus, the more restrictions you got, they know there's X number of people who are never going to give up what they've got, even if they're made illegal. Yep, so then there's more things they can prosecute you for down the road.
Indeed. Steve, you got some videos, and then we'll get you in on this.
Oh, cool. I had to pull it up.
So, yeah, the idea, and that's the whole reason I have the Armed Catholic while he's getting that started.
It's the same as you did when you were kids, but we can't let you get away with this anymore. Enough is enough. Enough of you telling us that school shootings are a fact of life when every other country like ours has virtually ended it. Enough of you blaming mental illness and then defunding mental health care in this country. Enough of your thoughts and prayers. Enough. Enough. You will not stop us from advancing the Protecting Our Kids Act today. You will not stop us from passing it in the House next week, and you will not stop us there. If the filibuster obstructs us, we will abolish it. If the Supreme Court objects, we will expand it, and we will not rest until we have taken weapons of war out of circulation in our communities. Each and every day, we will do whatever it takes to end gun violence, whatever it takes. What we will do
to protect yours in Canada. Now, here in the United States, as always, Democrats are watching very carefully what Trudeau is up to as they plan our future here. And already the rhetoric of the Democratic Party has changed for years. Democrats, Joe Biden, his supporters, the media have talked about banning AR-15s, the so-called weapons of war, which are not in fact used by any military. But weapons of war have been their focus. Watch.
The venom of the haters and their weapons of war.
Assault-style weapons that are weapons of war.
And purchase these weapons of war.
To get these weapons of war.
Finally ridding our streets of weapons of war.
What we should be doing is taking these weapons of war out of the hands of civilians.
Because they see what these weapons of war do on the street.
An assault weapon is a weapon of war.
Oh, come on.
With no place in a civil society.
We murder 60 million babies. There is no civil society.
There. Here's the first one. 17, 20 seconds long, and they're very interesting. And by the way, tell me if you think Mrs. Pelosi is all there. Here's the first one.
Raise the age to buy weapons of war, which is we call some of these guys, from 18 to 21. That age was recently reduced in Texas, and that's why an 18-year-old was able to buy that gun.
Incorrect.
So this is the beginning of the federalization, the federal control of firearms, which, of course...
Incorrect. It's 21 for handguns, 18 for rifles, regardless. So there's so much to unpack on there, too, and that's why, the Armed Catholic exists for me, to try and educate people on firearms, because as Ryan pointed out correctly, if you don't use a specific setter, if you're not really into it. If you're just you're right wing or conservative, but you don't like them, you'll believe the stuff like Joey says in this clip that Steve's about to play.
X-ray. He said a 22 caliber bullet will lodge in the lung, and we can probably get it out, may be able to get it and save the life. A 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. So the idea of these high caliber weapons is just there's simply no rational basis for it in terms of about self-protection, hunting. I remember, the Constitution, the Second Amendment, was never absolute.
Yeah, it's a good thing I use 12 gauge because that's not as powerful as 9mm. So I should be safe there. But Steve, jump in.
I'm not a gun enthusiast like you are, but I can get around everything. But I remember being in an Uber and I had a gun grabber in the car, and she acted like a Glock would just magically go off. Like just being around it, it scared her. I remember she saying that it just seeing it would scare her. And when during the drive, I talked to her about it and said, all you got to do is just, I went to this one lady and took from the beginning on how to take it apart, how to put it together, and she trained this one lady trained women how to, self-defense and, by blindfolding them and feeling the rivets in the barrel itself, etc. By the end of our discussion, it was just 15 minutes. She was ready to sign up to go to a class to learn how to shoot, defend herself. Because I was telling her about, like even those sharks, they come from behind and they go for the prey that they know they're not going to get hit with. And she had all this, nonsense built inside her. And I had that coming out of college. I remember coming out I remember telling a friend of mine that I was training in the gym that I was a self-proclaimed commie gun grabber coming out of college. I mean, that's where you get it. You just put that in your head during those days. It's all about you see what happened in Australia, England, China, what else? Overseas. I'm trying to think of the other nations that had.
New Zealand just recently did it.
We're talking about the lockdowns and what the big thing, common denominator of all these countries that went in this incredible lockdown. You saw the videos we were playing with the big protests in Australia and New Zealand and the Chinese when they were locked up in their houses. They're all disarmed. So Canada just came out and started to say, Trudeau, we're not selling, you're not trading, you're not bringing it across the borders, blah 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 blah. They're all about total control. So if none of that stuff, like you see the Boston Marathon thing, New York problems, West Coast problems. You don't have that in the dirty South. Sure, that was in Texas. There was a school, which is the only school with a door propped open at that time, which he happened to go to, and the guy propped it open before he showed up. I don't want to say weird things happening, but no one's questioning
with the Alex Jones stuff.
Yeah, there we go. And you had the what's his face, the Muslim dude in the Fort Hood, and that was the gun-free zone. What happened there? But you don't have that because everyone's. We jokingly called the first redneck battalion down here. You're not going to have stuff like that because people are going to defend themselves. Or if we joke saying if $8 gas was $8, you'd see an uprising. Or if they were locked in their houses like Chinese were, that ain't happening down here because of that problem. They know it. So I'm not I'm not a Second Amendment goes from here to Ice World of Hoth guy. I'm one of those that say, hey, look in your state constitution, the program that Mike and Kevin Gutzman put out on the corporation doctrine. I know Judge Knapp is he's a absolutist on the Second Amendment goes from here to Ice World of Hoth. Each state has the right to do whatever they want in each state. So California can, if they want to ban it, good luck. Move out of California. If you want to do it in Alabama, if you don't like it in Alabama, move out of Alabama. You have the right to do that in these states. That's the beauty of federalism, and also as well. But no one's going around shooting anybody. I don't know anybody. How many in Chicago? Enoch brought up Chicago. 51 wounded, 8 deaths this past weekend in the most restricted city in the states. And nobody's talking about it. Philadelphia, the same weekend, had almost double-figure deaths, shootings as well. One was a drive-by. I had it on Clown Planet. Nobody's talking about those. They're only focusing on this, going, well, it's the kids. The same kids that they want to abort if they were, 7, 8 years prior. They have no problem killing them this time, but it's okay. It's not okay if you kill them 7, 8 wounds because they used a gun. If they stabbed them to death, they probably wouldn't even care. If they do something else to them, they hit them with a car, nobody cares. This is all about this gun thing because they need absolute control, which is coming with all this stuff coming down with the food shortages, the food pricing, the possible electric problems coming down. You see, Michigan came out a couple of weeks ago saying they're going to have power outages in Michigan.
They ironically said that when they shut down their last nuclear power plant when they did that.
Yeah. I mean, all this stuff that's coming down the pipe, they need to disarm the citizenry so that they have no opposition coming. Because, hey, it wasn't Joe Rogan talked about it. They're not giving up their weapons. The first clip, the second clip that I showed on here, it was the Russians talking about nuking the states. Why? Because Brandon just sent another 700 billion overseas to Ukraine for more weapons. So we have no problem giving them weapons, tell them to go shoot. It's because you guys are doing it. And it ain't good. I mean, Ryan had a post the other day. What was it? Remember what it was, Ryan, about the 40 billion that they canceled, and they gave 40 billion overseas, but for the citizens, they not happening. So,
yeah, I can't remember precisely what it was. Veterans under a bridge, people struggling to make payments, people can't find food, women who have been told for years by the establishment and their pediatricians and you name it, oh yeah, don't breastfeed, just use formula. And when that is women who are able to nurse, but then have been told not to, and by the health authorities that don't really know much or care much about your health. So they went along with that, and now it's not there. Now they can't actually find the formula. And instead of saying, okay, well, we're going to help provide that for you, now we're going to send 40 billion over to another country that we have no business being in, for weapons of war to be put in the hands of civilians. Oh, that's okay because they're fighting the Russians. Yeah. And because they have a right to defend themselves, right? Yeah. Do we have a right to defend ourselves? Yes. Why don't you spend $40 billion and put it in our hands, right? But there's also $40 billion for, you just think of anything that, is going on right now, in coming in the cusp of, I don't know, just all the food shortages. I mean, $40 billion would go a long way to getting some plants open, helping some things to provide food. But they're not going to do that. They're going to send it over to Ukraine, which I've repeatedly called a fake war. I still say it's a fake war. Not that people aren't suffering and dying, but that, Zelensky has time to take away from being invaded by Russia, by this country on nuclear power, to do a graduation speech. Yeah, freaking right. I don't buy it. It's all fake. And so why is that money going over there? Well, because there's people who are the children of American politicians and bureaucrats that sit on the boards. They're not actually over in Ukraine, but they're on the boards of companies that are going to receive some of that 40 billion, and they're going to get lots of that money, and it's going to come right back over here. Foreign aid is money laundering. Always has been.
Yeah, Ukraine is the biggest money laundering operation right now out there. Just money after money after money going that way.
Yeah.
And
we wonder why we're in inflation.
Well, that's COVID and all that stuff as well. But that 40 billion, that's all fake money anyway. That will never be found or accountable or accounted for. But the idea, you don't have to be a gun enthusiast or any of this other kind of stuff to recognize the acceleration that they're going through with trying to, because COVID worked a little bit, but there was still resistance. So the next step that has to happen is that the populace has to be disarmed or has to be made fugitives, like you guys were saying. And so as we get towards this, I think there's going to be some executive actions coming down tonight, and I'll put it on video for it. I think he's going to try and executive order these things called 80% lowers. It's just the lower itself. He's going to try and executive order those things out of existence. I think he's going to try and executive order mandatory background checks for everything nationwide, because those are the things that, when you explain it to people, make the most sense, quote unquote. Oh, background checks. Well, guess what? There's a FBI report out from 2000 to 2019 on active shooters in schools. I can ask all three of you, which state do you think led the nation in active shooters in schools? Anybody want to take a guess?
Illinois.
Nope. Nope.
New York?
New York?
Nope.
No, I see where you're going.
California.
Yeah.
California, 42 in California. Florida was second, Texas was third, but California, which according to Every Town for Gun Safety, one of Bloomberg's operations, is number one. They got background checks, waiting periods, first blood, whatever else they come up with gun restrictions. They have them, and yet it leads the nation in active shooter situations at schools.
And what you just said goes back into what we talked about, the incorporation thing. If the governors and states and people knew what the Constitution actually is in the Bill of Rights, then whatever Brandon says tonight, okay, doesn't affect you one bit then, because each state has their own set of Bill of Rights. That Congress shall not. That's Congress, not NRA style of global, blanket thing.
And speaking of the NRA, here's an NRA stat for you. That big evil organization, the NRA. How many card-carrying NRA members? Not that I'm not a huge fan of the NRA. It's basically this thing, cashing in on boomers, saying we're going to protect your gun rights, and then not really do a whole lot.
The NRA
get a lot of heat from the left, right?
Before you jump in, the NRA they've stamped every gun control measure in the last 20 years.
So I'm not a fan of them, but
for fun
the NRA, every card-carrying member of the NRA pays money, uses guns regularly, right? How many of them have committed crimes?
Mm-hmm.
Zero.
Right.
None. For what a big evil organization that is. Now let's compare that with the shootings in Chicago, and how many of those people legally own their guns? I would be willing to bet it's a lot higher than zero.
Yeah. You tell me criminals don't obey the law?
Well, the kid didn't obey the gun-free zone, and the hospital was a gun-free zone too. All of these things take place in gun-free zones.
But my point is the ideology of thinking that the Second Amendment goes all around the world, the ice world, Hoth and back.
Nope.
That's the problem that's going to bite everyone in the back with Brandon coming out tonight.
I agree. In Texas, it's Article 1, Section 23. That's what I reference. That's my right to bear arms, not the Second Amendment, none of that other stuff. So I don't know. If we might see another great AR-15 run if you could find them that we saw in 2012 after Sandy Hook when they started beating the drums on that. But it's all of this stuff. It's all government overreach. It doesn't matter if it's the money for the inflation or gun control or the fact that Roe is finally being struck down. That was an overreach as well. But it's ridiculous that they're using the tragedies and Democrats can't wait to stand on the dead bodies of kids to try and enact more controlling measures against the population. So I don't know. Does anybody have any closing thoughts on either Roe or gun control before we move on?
Never let a crisis go to waste.
Indeed.
Perfect.
Okay. So let's move our focus here to some Catholic news. Earlier this week, Pope Francis named new cardinals. It was 21 of them. And there was the big thing that Catholic media is focusing on is that there were some from Africa, which is great. That's fantastic. But the ones that were highlighted here in the U.S. did cause a stir because of the ones who were selected. I say it from the beginning. I'm kind of like a Catholic hermit. I don't really care about any of this stuff. I also don't pay attention to it enough to speak on it. So that's why I'm glad I have you guys around to speak on it because I just don't know. So we'll go we'll go left. We'll go with Steve first. Your reaction to the, I'm just going to go with you first.
You just knew that I don't have much to say about it. No, I saw that they did it and there was a few McCarrick guys, but I mean, obviously it is who it is, who's the Pope. We know it's kind of like, what was it that one yell by Singletary after the game? Was it Singletary? We know
we're talking about Green.
Know who he is, so we're not
talking about Danny Green.
Do what?
Green, Coach Green.
Yeah, Green. We know who they are. They are who he is, and so it shouldn't be too shocking on what it is. Expect to be like, oh well, it'd be shocker if he ended up putting in some great sainted type Cardinals. But I mean, this shouldn't be shocking. Anybody's paying attention, but it gives everyone on Twitter and Facebook something to talk about, bloviate about for a little bit and get upset and get out of whack and take your focus. Almost kind of like in a trolling sense, it takes our focus off what we should be looking at and puts it all on this. And we're just going to complain about this till the end of time and gets nothing done. And not that we're it's basically talking about that. To me, it does absolutely nothing for anybody in terms of holiness and virtue, and I'm sure Enoch has more on that, but I know Ryan knows who these guys are. If they slap him upside the face outside of was it Tobin? I think Tobin got elected. Outside of him, I probably have no clue who they are.
Well,
So
anyway.
let me get Fwaz in real quick. I want to ask you this question. Do you, because this obviously is being put in position to have Pope Francis II being put in after, Papa Francis, whatever happens if he steps down or dies or whatever the case may be. Does this, because Pope Francis has said he'd be happy to be the Pope of a schism. I do know that. I might be misquoting it. Does the appointment of these cardinals, whether you know them or not, Francis likes them, so they're fitting a certain need. Does this kind of fast track the idea of a schism happening? Just as an observation, we're not planning things on that, because with these new cardinals, things will be pushed in a direction. I know one of the cardinals got a lot of heat on Twitter because he had a female deacon at a mass or something like that. I don't know if y'all caught that.
That's McElroy.
Yeah,
that's it. McElroy, that was the guy I was thinking.
So, Befwaz, do you think this fast tracks us to the idea of a schism, or is that just fear porn?
It could. Schism is very, I think, difficult. I mean, I knew you got the Germans who want the schism. Now, I know McElroy actually pretty well, to be honest with you. He was the Bishop of San Diego, and I was working for the diocese for when he got appointed, I think in 2016 or 2017, whenever it was. And it wasn't just McElroy. It was what happened just yesterday. I think he appointed Supich to the divine worship, elevated him to that office. So it seems to me like his Holy Father is he might be making his last finale. I don't think he has that much time left. So the fact that you pass up someone like Gomez, who's running an archdiocese, the fact that you pass up Corleone, who did what he did with barring Nancy Pelosi from receiving communion, rightfully so, for her own sake, who was also an archdiocese, and you go to a little diocese like San Diego and elevate McElroy, who they wanted to elevate back in 2018-19, but because of the whole Richard Sype situation, they had to let that dust settle, and wait for all that the dust to pass, and then elevate him to the red hat. They wanted to put McElroy from the very beginning because he echoes the same ideology as Supich, Worrell, McCarrick, the guy in Washington D.C. I forgot his name. The Archbishop. So
Gregory.
I think Francis really wants the Catholic Church to continue his own image and likeness. And here's my major issue with this. This could lead to schism, but the folks who are in power in Rome, in the Vatican, and also a lot of the bishops here in the States and across the world are unfortunately the folks who want to do away with what we call doctrines and dogmas of the faith, and specifically because they want to treat. I mean, who was it? What was that cardinal's name? What was the bishop's name that Pope Francis elevated to the Ecclesia Dei? He put all the communities, even the fraternity, under his wing. Who wants to get rid of all communities who are hermits, nuns who are praying for the salvation of souls and sustaining the world. They want a social justice, worldwide, WEF type of church, and you see the same rhetoric coming from those guys. It being June, the month of the Sacred Heart, where the Sacred Heart is all about humility, and it being Pride Month, being the I guess what they call Pride Month, which is the worst sin, which is in contrast to humility, complete. I think this should teach us the fact that we don't have much power here. We should be humble enough to fast and pray and petition to God in heaven as much as we can. We be humble enough that we're beggars here, that God would appoint that either. We have a Constantine here who God can elevate to the Pope, change his heart, and we can have a traditional Pope that way, or that if they're natural death and they face judgment before they're elevated, or even before they retire, the Vatican come in that route. But It's going to put more restrictions in the TLM in the near future, in my personal opinion. More restrictions on the communities, fraternity, orders like possibly the Lawrence, or Institute of Christ the King, or anybody who's dissenting from Francis's image and likeness of the church. But if I was the Antichrist, which I hopefully I'm not, but if I was the devil, we all know, not only in the church but also across the world, there seems to be this whole understanding of the unnatural law. What they're all doing is they're attacking what's called the natural law, and so far as everything seems to be synthetic and generic. The new earth, I love what Stephen calls it, earth is a religion. It seems to me everything is synthetic. Breastfeed. Don't eat a huge have. In the church, they're doing this. They're doing away with what's called the natural law and understanding the divine law, and they're bringing things like, well, this is an absolute. The dogmas and doctrines not absolute. They can be changed. We can have women deacons. We can have a women priest. And this is what happens when you have an entire generation, a few generations in the past, that have been taught to conform their own personal opinions and justify them by fitting them in the square in the church, saying, well, if this is how you really feel, then we can go ahead and take that and kind of mix it with church teaching, and you can still get away with it. We see with this whole quote unquote Pride Month nowadays that most of the Jesuits came out on social media talking about the dignity of the LGBT community. We're talking about the marginalized and forgotten group, the most coddled group in history at this point. So they're continuing to push this crazy agenda. Now, all we have on our side is now, okay, I will say this, though, this will be my final point. There are some good news coming here. A lot of these young priests, a lot of these young men, God is raising up young men to be more traditional, to be hardworking in the liturgy. And as far as, I remember when Father Ripperger came out for a retreat in San Diego, we had this group of people who came to the retreat, and their families came to Mass, and they all wanted some sacramentals to be blessed. Well, Father R took out his book of blessings on his phone. That's where he has it, and each sacramental took longer, to bless, because he did it the right way. He didn't just put a hand over the sacramental, say a few prayer, and ask you to put some holy water when you get home, like some of the laziest priests do. God is raising up some of these young priests. I read a small statistic, unfortunately, and I think it's ripe right now what they're doing. The nation is ripe. The reason is because the average testosterone level of a 25-year-old right now is the same average testosterone level of a 67-year-old 20 years ago, only 20 years ago, 67-year-old and a 25-year-old. So we're raising a bunch of sissies who this is ripe. If you want to take over, you take over right now, because no one's going to stand in your way. There's no opposition. But luckily, we have a small group of young priests coming out of the seminary who want tradition, and I think we might end up in the caves, in the catacombs, but we'll have to rebuild the church that way, I guess. So we'll need heaven's help.
Ryan, what do you? Obviously, we're turning to you, buddy, for information on the actual who's who and why this is awful.
Well, in the first place, you have, the big news is Bishop Robert McElroy, who is the bishop in San Diego, which is not an archiepiscopal see. It's actually considered a suffragan see of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. So that's kind of a big breach of protocol in that case, and is rather a bit of a, obviously making clear, the Pope, for whatever reasons, not happy with Gomez. Of course, champion the document on the Eucharist, trying to get unity on it. And McElroy was one of the biggest opponents of it, taking the most liberal view of any of the bishops present. And, in terms of the general situation of the USCCB, McElroy is more of like a liberal outlier, even as much as back in the day, someone like Bruskowitz was a conservative outlier on the other side. But he's part of the gang. That is the McCarrick gang. And so we saw a few years ago, of course, Cardinal Tobin getting the red hat. We saw Supage got a red hat and got one of the prime in most principal dioceses in this country, namely that of Chicago. And we see pretty much every protege, everybody connected with McCarrick is getting either appointed to an important see or being given a red hat. In this case, and obviously the overall context with Cordileone denying Nancy Pelosi communion, that can't be overlooked too. Although I don't think that was necessarily immediately in Francis's mind, because this decision would have been prepared prior to that news event taking place. But it does, heighten exactly where the Pope's not really interested in employing canon law. He's not interested in protecting the sanctity of the Holy Eucharist and the integrity of the liturgy and building up the faithful's devotion to the Eucharist. He's looking to promote the people that are most used to him in his social agenda that he's looking to promote. So McElroy is a key part of that. And you look at the guy over the years, the big one, of course, that everyone's complaining about, that he had some liturgy with some female altar server setting everything out, which is a deacon's job. That actually did phase me, because I haven't been to the Novus Ordo in so long. I have no idea what they do there anymore. So I just kind of took it as that kind of is probably normal for the Novus Ordo. And we'd never tolerate it in the Byzantine Rite. We'd never tolerate it in the the traditional mass, but there you have it. So that didn't strike me, but the fact that the guy is and also a huge promoter of Pride Month, huge promoter of this particular sin and normalizing it, legitimizing it. And he's right in line in that with Supage and with Gregory and people like that. And of course, liturgically, he's only begrudgingly tolerated the fraternity there. They were there before him. And so, but he's not allowing further Latin masses in the diocese. He's really not interested in it. And then we come down to, so why isn't Gomez getting a red hat? Because Gomez, interestingly enough, is Hispanic Archbishop of Los Angeles, one of the biggest sees in the country, and so he's not getting a red hat. No. I thought, what about the peripheries, right? Go to the peripheries. Not that periphery, because his opposition to, the McCarrick boys at the last bishops' meeting pretty much put him off the list. And same thing, you could also look at Ukraine, for example, and a lot of people have pointed to this, is that he's not, the popes have traditionally given cardinalates to Eastern Catholic prelates, even though technically you're an assistant in the Roman Church, right? But it's something they've kind of overlooked, to give honor to these Eastern Catholic prelates. The Ukrainian prelate, if you wanted to, show support for the Ukrainian people, that would be a great way to do it. Nope, I can't do that. Because there's plenty of prelates there. The Orthodox won't like that in our dialogue, which they don't even care about. So therefore, we're not going to do it. And there's further things that there is a sharp message, and it's clear that what Francis is trying to do, he is trying to shape the next conclave out of something like 132 cardinal electors. Francis has appointed 83 of them. And he's probably going to look to get a bunch more too before the end of the year, because his health is on the decline. I don't think he's going to die anytime soon. Leave that in God's hands. But all the people kind of hoping, salivating, oh good, he's going to go anytime now. I've been telling him, don't get your hopes up. I don't think you're probably going to have him for the majority of the year. So, but that's the kind of the ins and out of it. This is what the McElroy appointment kind of shows. Fawaz talked a lot about the CDW and, of course, the people who are going there. It should not be any surprise. I mean, if you see Traditionis Custodes in the accompanying letter, what does he say in the accompanying letter? The purpose of this is to bring all the faithful who currently go to the traditional mass to the Novus Ordo. That is the end goal that they have. So it doesn't matter whether you go to the fraternity. It doesn't matter whether you go to a diocesan indult or the Institute of Christ the King or whatever. In that document, Francis is telling you exactly what he means. It doesn't matter what permission or guarantee he gave the fraternity that he's going to roll back on that later. He's not going to leave that go, because he set out his goal. We're going to get rid of it. And these are the guys that you want to issue decisions that are going to get rid of it. And the best way to do it, of course, will be to create division by following up a really bad move by Benedict back at some point in 2008 or 9, where he rewrote the Good Friday prayer in the 62 Missal, right? That'll be the precedent, and they'll start writing all kinds of, or inserting Novus Ordo propers into the 62 and say, all right, you got to use this. This is the new and improved 1962 that you're going to use. And that's, going to be kind of be the plan to kind of move everybody over, which will be a huge thing, because it'll split all the communities. A lot of the faithful are not going to go for that. and the clergy themselves in these orders are not going to go for that. So you're going to have people just kind of silently making their way until found out. Others, when it's forced, they're going to say, you know what, I'm not doing it. And you'll have a big split, which is probably what they want, frankly. But that's how it's going to do. These are the guys you want to have in place if your goal is, like in the accompanying letter, to completely eliminate the traditional mass. So, and then you've got all the new Catholic Red Guards up, just salivating to jump out and say, "See, it's because of your mean tweets that all the left Catholics, Fagioli and what's his name over it, where Peter isn't, Lewis, and these sorts of things. They're just ready to come out. It's your fault because you're a mean trad, and so you guys got to get with Francis's program." And
it's because of Mass of the Ages too.
You guys haven't obeyed Sid's Paul VI wrote Humanae Vitae. None of these guys obeyed crap until Francis became Pope, and now they're insisting on obedience. I'm not buying it. Sorry.
No, that's usually par for the course. Now, Fawaz, you mentioned something about testosterone and people now. This was an article from The Atlantic I saw earlier this week. You guys are going to, it's pretty hysterical. Talking about this, we live in an artificial world. Why it's easier to be skinnier in the 1980s. That's the byline that I really want to look at. A new study shows that people who eat the same and exercise the same today as back then are still fatter. So it's because you're ingesting GMO food, you're ingesting all this other kind of stuff. Yeah. And no matter what, I'm living proof you can't out-exercise your diet, no matter what. Because I'm always like, I'll have this, but I'll make sure I go to the gym. Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's something I tell myself.
I drink beer. That's going to keep me fat.
Well, the good news is people who in their 60s, if they have a better quality of life if they drink before and after surgery. I just read that study this morning. So you're actually in good shape. I actually start drinking because I don't do it, according to that study. So that's what they're telling me.
Well, even the beer's all messed up. You got GMO stuff in beer. That's why you go get the craft beer.
That's why I get my local beer.
Yeah.
My brother's down the street. I know exactly what he puts in there, and it ain't that.
Did you see the Sam Adams? I don't know, some faggy.
Literally every problem that we talk about almost can go back to localism. The beer is GMO, Miller Lite, Coors Light, Girls Light. We'll get your local guy to brew it. We're making it yourself. The
coffee's
in your town. The
coffee's an issue, though. I don't have a volcano in the background to set up my greenhouse to get volcanic ash to grow really good coffee. So.
No, well, you go to Twin Pikes. Go to Twin Pikes. They make coffee locally in Missouri, I believe.
Growing it too. That's what I'm talking about. The growing it, not merely of the roasting it.
Yeah, they do that.
Awesome.
We're like this kind of like this topic. I mean, I was talking to Bishop Snyder the other day, and we were talking about evangelization. His book on the new springtime that didn't come. And it's basically an interview book. But if we look at it in a global scale, we're bringing out global issues. And if you think about what can I do? All right, you worry about your street, your house, your street, your neighborhood, your city, your parish. Every traditional parish that's listening here should have everybody in that neighborhood going to that parish. And if not, why not? You should be active in converting that neighborhood. If you convert that neighborhood and your other parish converts, so say like there's, I'll just pick out Kansas City because I know there's ICK fraternity. You have like 6 diocese parishes and things like that, traditional wise. If all of them just stuck at it and went, let's convert the city, got together and did it, they would blow up their area. They need new churches probably. They might need to double and triple their size. And you might make that city, then that state, more livable, better to live in, things like that. This stuff that you see coming out from Biden and all that, you wouldn't have that much to worry about because then all of a sudden you're governing maybe by Catholic morals and virtues. You might start, forcing that stuff back and then worrying about your neighborhood. You're eating better. Everything that your life goes around could be, exponentially better because you're now living the faith in all aspects of your life by just converting the area to the true faith.
Well, unless you live in Winona, Winona, Rochester, Minnesota. Sorry, guys. You guys get Bishop Barron now. He went from Archbishop to Bishop Barron. And Eric Sammons on Twitter had a very interesting thread about this. Was this a demotion or not? Because he actually did the numbers. The number of Catholics in Winona, Rochester is about 134,000. total. So in the initial assessment, oh, that's obviously a demotion. Went from L.A. to backwoods Minnesota, which is becoming more Islamic anyway because of Minnesota and the refugee population that's in there. But I don't know, gentlemen, is this a promotion? We'll go Steve, Waz, and Ryan. Is it a promotion? Is it a demotion? Because with the internet, you can still have global reach. And now Bishop Barron is a favorite of the left. See, and the neocon right. See his interview with Ben Shapiro. So just give me your thoughts. Demotion, promotion. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I guess it's all about how you handle it. I mean, I think Garnier today writes about numbers. We talked about that before. It's not about the numbers. We should be worried about how. I mean, there's maybe what 6 million in LA. How great are they? I mean, they're not that the numbers there. They have great numbers, but how many are very devout, on fire Catholics converting LA? See how LA's society and culture is versus 100,000 Catholics in a city. May not be a big city. So what if they're, what if they're better? They're more educated, more catechized, more on fire to try to do something. I don't know the city for anything, but I would take those guys just like, if you get like Hoosiers, Indiana, like the movie Hoosiers, I'll take that team with more heart, the small team that had 12 guys in the school, than say like a big university. You see that with the Cinderella stories. Everyone's looking at the little guy. So no, I would take the heart over the numbers any day of the week.
Fawaz, what do you think?
It's hard to tell right now. I think that diocese, the bishop that just resigned, it's a mess. There's a mess in the diocese. It's possible. Here's the thing. I don't really buy the way he handled Word on Fire's scandal. I mean, you're gonna put McElroy and Supich and those guys who are good friends with McCarrick, and that scandal didn't stop them from being elected to cardinal. I don't think the Vatican really cares about a small little scandal happening in a company like Word on Fire. It's possible they're moving him to that. He becomes a bishop of that diocese. So to see if he can handle it, fix it, and then maybe give him his red hat later on. Because at the end of the day, as Barron is a little bit better than the other guys, I guess in some ways, but he's still a company man. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, he may be a small-time bishop right now. He's still a bishop.
That's exactly right. And this is more, in my opinion, failing forward than it is anything else. So Barron has this scandal that really should be looked into. Actually, as somebody independent should look into it, and give is this something that was. What's his management style? Was he aware of it? Why is it that Barron, for whatever inexplicable reason, surrounds himself with all these bodybuilders, one way or the other, that post really scandalous stuff on their social media, and that's their kind of what they do. But Barron's shown himself to be a team player, and he's certainly done good things. I'm not a Barron fan at all. But I will admit that some of his material has been good and useful for people. And there have been people that eventually wound up in the traditional mass, but it was Barron that first got them started. And then they said, as they got into more and a deeper study of the faith, they said, well, you know what? I'm glad I found his stuff, but he's kind of milquetoast. I'm going to go over here. But really, in my opinion, it's failing forward. He's got this big mess. And so now we're going to make you a bishop, get you out of all that, and put him in charge of, this business over there. And I'm certain that he'll be counted on to deliver with things that these the McCarrickites want to see happen. So
Unmute. There we go. Yeah, so it is interesting to see the shakeups and the ideas that come from it. It's a demotion, it's a promotion. He's still a bishop. He still will. I could probably say my very limited knowledge. I never read Word on Fire or any of that other kind of stuff. But it could honestly be where you set somebody up. I think Fawaz might have said that. You set him up to see how he does in this smaller diocese. and then eventually prep him to handle a larger diocese, maybe go back to LA or do whatever, or go somewhere else as it moves forward. But interesting move in the church, but it's not something. The church politics, I guess they're fun to talk about on shows like these. It gives us something to discuss, but in the end, it really doesn't matter to us in that regard. Just have to keep going forward in that.
Pray for him to become one of us. Imagine that kind of microphone.
Yeah, absolutely. I pray. You got to pray for the bishops of Pope all the time.
Yeah, the Catholicism series was solid, except that, I mean, imagine if he would have done the traditional way on that. It would have been huge.
He would not be a bishop if he did. I'll tell you that much. He would not be ascending to the women, and obviously, you know, it would have been a necessary sacrifice. Before we get that, we're going to use Mass of the Ages to kind of transition to Top Gun Maverick before we head out of here. Thoughts on Mass of the Ages too? I thought it was really well shot, and here's my question on that. I know I'm rambling. It's just been that kind of day. Thoughts on Mass of the Ages, and how do you think the treatment of the Pope who oversaw Vatican II? Do you think it was too light? Do you think it was just right? How do you think they treated that? We'll go Steve, Fwaz, Ryan.
Oh, you're lucky I watched it. Then I wasn't planning on it. I was
necessary viewing.
I was uploading a bunch, and everyone was asking me, so I said, "All right, I'll go and click it while I'm doing work." And I thought it was all right. I mean, my thing is, it's my only, I guess, issue with the whole. There's no problem with the video. Is we're talking to the choir basically. I mean, it's almost like a jokingly said about one conference called the Water is Wet conference. We all know the problem. We all know what happened. How do you get the normies to see that? The people at Our Lady of What's Happening Now isn't going to watch that. How do you get that in front of them? That's the marketing for this. Who cares if every fraternity parish and ICK parish, or I know Bishop Strickland had a big group of people go to the movie theater. All right, who cares? What about those people that need to see it or think everything's fine? I think there's a new springtime, like in Chicago, where they closed down 70% of the churches, or Cincinnati, they closed 70%. In Chicago, they closed 100 parishes, and they all think that's great, and it's now a missionary way to do it. How do you get those people to watch it? That's my question. So I know they're trying to do some kind of fundraising to do ads on AdSense. But yeah, that'd be my thing. I mean, great. We put movies out there. I mean, even like the videos on mine. I know there's somebody from an Anglican, Ryan would like this. Tell Father Gordon this. An Anglican church asked about the last gospel series that Father did for the slideshows. I'm going, hey, at least the Anglicans are watching, but I ain't helping them get the slides. But so like Mass of the Ages, is people like that from outside our circle seeing it? That'd be my main thing. How do we get those guys? I don't care if Ryan watches. I don't care if Fawaz watches. I don't care, Rick. I want those people that don't see it, Mr. and Mrs. McGillicuddy. How do you get them to watch that?
Well, I care. All right, Steve. Fawaz, jump in.
I agree with Stephen 100%. I think if you're not going to get, Father so-and-so in your normal Novus Ordo parish to show that it's some, parish-wide movie night. I thought the documentary was done well. I thought production-wise, it's done just as well as any other documentary out there, by the big guys. It wasn't something that, as far as Paul VI goes, I think they tried to have some respect for the office of the Pope and pin a lot of stuff on Bunini, rightfully so. But it wasn't a lot of the stuff in the documentary that I haven't heard before. I particularly enjoy the dialogue between the bishops. That was my favorite part of it. Other than that, it was stuff that was common that most of the traditionalists know. And but yeah, I agree. Now I do have to leave if you guys don't mind. But if I can give my
give it. That's fine.
My cry room person, and my saint of the day. So my cry room is going to be Amber Heard. So
once again, taking who I got.
Pick a hard one, really.
Thanks, buddy.
Not a lot of.
From now on, I'm going before Fawaz. I'm going before Fawaz from now on. All of that, hey?
That was his plan. He was leaving early so he could throw that in.
I got to put that in there. Yeah, it was hard to think of one. With a newborn, I haven't kept up with a lot of the stuff. So, but I did decide to that one. So, it goes to show you that if I don't know, it's good to see a feminist lose in court for once. But other than that, that's what I'll put her on there. But yeah, that's my take on Master the Ages. He's done very well. I agree with Steve. And maybe it's up to us. Maybe it's up to us to, we all know some Nova Sordo family or person or gal who we can send it to and say, hey, check this out and let's talk about it after. And see what they think. Maybe it's up to us, the trads, to circulate it around that group. We all know somebody, so
good point.
That's my thing. Yeah.
Ryan, so do you have a saint of the week, or are you just you're good either way? You know what? Don't worry about it, man. If you gotta go, you gotta go.
Okay. God bless you guys. Take care. Well, my saint of the week is my wife. 36 hours of labor and naturally no epidural there. That's my saint of the week.
Yep.
Brownie points tonight, guys. God bless.
God bless, buddy. Ryan, what do you got?
Mass of the Ages. I haven't seen it, to be perfectly honest. From what I understand, it's meant to kind of broach the conversation and get people exposed to it and why they should want to go to it. I haven't been in the Nova Sordo since 2007, so except for maybe a wedding. I don't need to be convinced. Good on them for making it. I just haven't really had the interest to go out and see it. So just because of where I'm at, I do encourage anyone else who doesn't know anything about the traditional mass or why it's important to go see it, because I absolutely support making a video, making productions to bring the tradition out there and help people get exposed to it who otherwise don't know much about it. So hats off to the people making it, but again, I just haven't had a chance to see it.
Yeah, like Ryan's point, I went to a Nova Sordo parish just a couple weeks ago because there was nothing where we were at in that city, nothing for 3 hours. And with the kids, it just wasn't going to drive them out. We ended up just sucking it up and going. And we brought the median age down by 150 years. And none of those people, that's the target audience. How do you get those people to watch that? I don't know. That's the $1 million question. But it's great for people to, as Ryan said, to figure it out what happened. But those are the guys, because a lot of people think that everything's great. It's super. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, it is super. Yeah, I guess if you're somebody like Ryan or you, Steve, where you're just like, I don't need the convincing. I like to keep up on that stuff because I like to see how the message is being shaped. Because I am brand new. I've only been going to the Latin Mass for about a year, and as a former Nova Sordo, and sometimes I got to suck it up and go somewhere around there for one reason or another around here. And believe me, it is absolutely not fun to go to a Nova Sordo Mass. But as somebody who came in rather recently, most traditional Latin Mass people are terrible at messaging. I'm sorry to say it. You guys are awful at messaging because... And it may not. I'm not talking about Ryan or Steve specifically, or am I? But the idea that it's fire and brimstone, that you're terrible, that you go to the Nova Sordo and all this other kind of nonsense has probably contributed to the divisiveness. So I like the messaging with Mass of the Ages. And as somebody who's brand new to the Latin Mass, I definitely want to get your opinions on it if you did see it, on how I'm learning about this stuff from these. So
it was well done. I mean, I know that Ryan brought up a guy a minute ago that Peter is Lewis. He was really going after something. There was a priest on there. I don't know much about the story, but he was highlighted quite often in the movie. I thought it was great. And then it brings up that he was illicitly ordained or something. Going, okay, you can watch that whole thing, and that's the one thing you get out. Let's go after the people. What's the message? Is it right or wrong? And we'll worry about that other thing later. I have no clue, nor do I care. That's above my pay grade. Was he right on what he was talking about? And this guy just went after just personal attacks on this priest for He was like, oh, he was all day. How do you have time for this?
Yeah, some people I do. Sometimes when I do scroll through Twitter, I'm like, you guys got to find some time to get off and
get a life. Yeah.
Do you people
Twitter
work?
is like my 10 minutes, whatever I'm working on a couple hours in, and it's like I need to get a break, clear my head, and go out, and I'll get on Twitter for 10 or 15 minutes, and then it's just enjoyment. Really, actually, I can actually enjoy it because I have muted all the people I don't want to hear from, and just a circle of people I interact with, and I post spicy memes and obnoxious takes, and feel better about myself, and go back to my toxic day.
That really is. I just dunk on people all day and post gifs. If you look at my timeline, that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's just the most dumb. It's the dumbest takes ever. Because I know the media, the intellect on Twitter is not very high, the IQ on it. So
right, but there are people for whom Twitter is their life. It's like its own miniature little world, and they really think that's important. And unfortunately, there's ways that does extend into the world. Like again, with the corporation switching over to Rainbow to bring it back to our first story. Why do they do that? Because if they don't, the Twitter mobs are going to go after them. Well, but why are you paying attention to these mobs of these losers on Twitter that aren't going to buy your products? Don't care about whatever your messaging is. They're not going to support you, even if you do put it up. But it's one more tool in the compliance thing in terms of the mass formation psychosis that the media is absolutely essential for. And I think that's why so many people do invest in Twitter. And that's on because you have mass formation psychosis on both sides of things, not just in terms of the left and the woke messaging, but even on the right too. And whether it's in reaction to or its own form of it, and then this stuff then makes your own little world for it. Go hike, get like a 3-hour hike. Go find a mountain, find a forest, find a park,
take a nap.
Put the phone in the Faraday bag, leave it alone.
But yeah, I agree. More people lives would be better if you're off Twitter. I try to use Sunday as a day where I stay off Twitter just because I don't need that nonsense on that. But let's move to our last topic, which I'm probably the only one out of the three of us that have seen it. But I did for my my movie review with Top Gun Maverick. It is in the zeitgeist right now. If you don't see movies, I get it. Let me say these two things up front before everybody blows me up. Tom Cruise is a cult leader, and it's a war propaganda movie. I get these two things. They need to be said. However, Top Gun Maverick is a heck of a time. There's one girl in there. She's a side character. She's not in any way, shape, or form integral to the plot. And it's also real life. Unfortunately, there are female pilots. The story we're fighting, I don't know if Ryan saw the Critical Drinkers review of it, where we're fighting not Russia.
Not Russia.
That was kind of funny. It was like, we're fighting not Russia, because we are fighting Russia in that one. But the whole concept of it, it's masculine. It's the toxic masculinity that exists. It's the role of elders in leading youth. Youth can't be the solution to everything. There's no blue-haired feminist that is berating anybody in this film. Kelly McGinnis, who's now a fat lesbian, is not in the film. It was replaced with Jennifer Connelly. A-okay move on my part. If I was to review on that. But the whole concept is you can watch this film, and yes, Tom Cruise is a cult leader, and it is war propaganda, but it is a good time. There's nothing sexual in it. There's unfortunately, there's one GD towards the end of the film, which just gives me an opportunity to say admirable is the name of God. If you know your prayers for that. But I enjoyed it. If you want to go see it, you're not going to have a bad time with it. And it was a nice throwback film. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on it. It is the #1 movie all time on Memorial Day weekend, and it is kind of the topic of conversation. So I'm pretty sure Steve didn't see it.
I'm looking forward to it. We were supposed to go today, but something happened with my mother-in-law. We didn't make it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. But I was wondering how the language was, because the original Top Gun,
awful. I rewatched it. I'm like, what are we doing?
I don't remember.
That was the heyday of the 80s, where there was no language limit. One time, I remembered Karate Kid when I was a kid. It's like, oh, what did I put? So I gave my wife this. Oh, this was an 80s classic. You should watch it. Is there anything bad in it? I don't think so, as I can't remember. Well, sure enough, everyone takes our Lord's name in vain after every 5 seconds, and she had to turn it off. And I was like, wow, I'm shocked. I honestly forgot And so now I have to go back, and then I was just remembering, it's funny about my kid remembrance of all these movies in the 80s. I go back and look at them on websites that give you all the breakdown of all the language used. And like, dang, every movie in the 80s was full of this language. I never know, but I wasn't even Christian. So, I mean, right, I was technically baptized, but I wasn't a practicing Christian at all. I didn't know anything about anything. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to, all these things just kind of sat there, and
I couldn't keep up with my prayer. I couldn't keep up with admirable is the name of God in the third act of Top Gun. I was getting absolutely blown out of the water. I was like, okay, we got to keep going, because the bald head guy, he's just firing them off every 5 seconds. Yo, Maverick's out there. Oh my God. It's like, dude, relax. There are other things you can say besides this.
At least they didn't even shoot a bullet. Notice Top Gun was there to be dogfighting, and they only used missiles in the first one.
No, there's an interesting the first part, the dogfighting. It's enjoyable because he just I'm not spoiling anything. He schools them all in the first one, and I won't spoil what they do because they're cocky. Because
I saw 6 Looper videos on it. I'll watch Looper before I watch another show sometimes. It's no big deal.
Spoiler if anybody wants to go see it and you haven't seen it yet. But when they're like, all right, old man, let's make a bet. If you lose, you got to do 200 push-ups. And he's like, well, that's a lot of push-ups. And he just says, all right, but that's a lot of push-ups. And then he just schools every single one of them. And at the end, you see them all doing push-ups. And Tom Hanks' character, the Admiral, he's like, these are the best pilots in the world. And Cruise is like, yeah, they've been told that their entire life as they've been doing high-altitude bombings from 35,000 feet. They haven't been doing anything, so they're not ready for it. It's very interesting how it's kind of a rejection of a lot of the things. It's good because the reviewers are like, there's not enough diversity. They really wanted the Star Wars The Last Jedi treatment, where they wanted some purple-haired feminist talking down to Tom Cruise, telling him you're too toxic and you're out of your element, buddy, and you're a dinosaur.
That's funny you brought up Star Wars, because they say that fight scene reminisced the fight scene.
Trench run. It's the trench run. So but here's the thing: there's 800 hours of footage they shot for this film in the F-18s that they did for like 30 seconds. They did there's maybe 2 or 3 obvious.
And they're actual F-18s. It's not CGI F-18s, which is the most fantastic thing. Is everything is CGI, everything, and because there's so much demand on it, now the A team is kind of gone, and you have a lot of the B and C teams working that don't have the experience. A lot of the CGI just looks crummy on a lot of productions, especially of course all the comic book productions are really a mess. And it's I look at everything I've seen for this movie. It looks really good, and what it makes me think of is back the first time a couple of years ago I rewatched Alien for the first time. I don't know how long, and there's a chain rattling, and that just struck me. This felt like a real thing. That kind of practical effect you really don't see in movies anymore. So that's what I'm so excited about this particular film, eventually to get to see it, just because practical effects, no woke messaging, no preaching, just a good old-fashioned kind of movie you can enjoy in spite of things that we don't necessarily care about. Again, Tom Cruise and Scientology and the war propaganda. Obviously, we don't have to buy into all those things to enjoy the bloody movie. That's kind of my attitude on it. And in the fact that Tom Cruise sits down in the beginning to thank everyone for coming to theater, just show a little bit of humility. Supposedly there's some controversy where he was mad at some assistant right after that. Whatever. He at least took the time to do something. And it's more gratitude than any of these Hollywood elites, singing Imagine while everyone's losing their jobs under the unspecified virus of unspecified origin. They're so arrogant, and they're going to preach to the world. They basically are making movies for themselves and their peers. That's what they're doing. Whereas here we have, again, Tom Cruise, Scientology bad, get it. But at least he's saying we're making movies for people to watch. And that's what this movie is about.
It is an absolute dedication to the vocation of movie making. And once again, I'm going to cite The Critical Drinker because I watched a bunch of his stuff. But the idea that this is a sequel to a film and not content, like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was designed to be consumed and forgotten about. Like
Right.
all the Marvel TV shows, consumed and forgot. Star Wars, consumed and forgotten about.
It was a joke that Red Letter Media did a few years ago in their
Yeah.
Nerd Crew episode. I don't know if you saw that particular thing, but I forget which Nerd Crew it was that they did, where one of the guys, and they had a satire, if anyone goes to look it up, that's not how they really are. But anyway, one of the characters goes, I'm just here to consume product and then wait for next product and consume that product.
Yeah.
Right. I think that was like 2016. And that's precisely what every Disney production, at least, and virtually everything else has become: consume more product, wait for more product, consume more product.
Yeah, I hope there's not a third one. It's ended perfectly.
Yeah.
I hope that, I think Cruise is enough of an egomaniac. We all know that. The guy's nuts enough. It took him 36 years to make the second one. So unless he's going to live to be 110, which you'd be like, I'm still flying, buddy. 110 years old, thanks to Scientology. I don't think that's going to be the
just a tidbit at the end of the first one. They started World War III at the end of that. They
Oh, this one they totally started World War
high-fiving everybody. Hey, we shot down some MiGs, which weren't big. And they started World War III over that.
Yeah, well, they just keep it going. But war propaganda, obviously. So if you want to see it, I gave it 4 out of 4, my highest rating. It's very much in line. I don't know if anybody saw Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Yeah, I saw it.
If you did you like that? Did you like Ghostbusters Afterlife?
Yeah,
I did and I didn't. It's not the same. Oh, sorry, Steve. I just usurped. I've been blabbing. You blabbed. All right. I liked it. There were elements of it that were really good, that played very well. There were other things that are just like, come on, really? Egon's ghost talking to his granddaughter to explain to her how this stuff works. I was like, come on, no, that's so cheesy. But at least they tried. It really lacked originality, in my opinion. It tried too hard to stay within. Okay, so let's bring back the evil Shandor from the first one, who's the architect, and some new cult to him out in Omaha, whereas the locus of his activity is New York. Okay, fine. At least Ghostbusters try to be original. But either way, I still give them credit. I really liked how they explored the girl developing things, and the way they built her character, and just trying to make a movie that would be wholesome. Even though Paul Rudd's in it, he was actually pretty good. I liked his character as well. But just try to be wholesome. Just try to do something that's good without the messaging. Let's just try to push a little more out of the storyline. I thought it's kind of lame having the Ghostbusters just come right up at the end and they just know what to do. But whatever.
They ran out of money. Let's just
they know to magically get there, right? Yeah. Come on, seriously. But still, I would have given that maybe 2.5 out of 4 or 3 out of 4. Just because it was trying, it wasn't trying to be offensive or harmful. It was enjoyable to watch, and it wasn't again, like Ghostbusters 2016, where it's not the fact that they decided to gender swap and reboot. I could take that if you had a good story, because we're talking about fighting demons with science, basically, right? Fighting, it's just this ridiculous satire of science versus the paranormal, the unexplained. And you could have done that well, but it's the way they do it that makes it so obnoxious. The very lowbrow humor, the fact that there's no concept of how to move the story, things that take you about 10 seconds in the original Ghostbusters. It's like a 3.5-minute scene in the Ghostbusters 2016 because the comedians that are supposedly comedians, none of them are really funny, decided, we're going to make this hilarious scene where we're the proton bag and you're flying around with it. And part of the real joke is that's the only thing I could lift Melissa McCarthy off the ground. But in the original Ghostbusters, a 30-second scene, they turn it on, makes crazy science noise, everyone steps back. Now this thing's dangerous. That's all you need. That show and not tell. And the presence of the characters. You don't have any of that in Ghostbusters 2016. So it's like, and I'm not even trying to play politically correct here. I honestly, if you had it with women, but you had a good story and maybe tried something a little bit original, it might have been enjoyable. I might have liked it, but instead it went the other way to preach the message. So
yeah, because the daughter's a girl, and it wasn't that bad.
I thought she was fantastic.
Yeah.
Although I love the fact that what's his name, Paul Feig, the guy who's responsible for Ghostbusters 2016 over at Sony, he was mad that the official box
They didn't have
doesn't have
it.
Ghostbusters 2016 in it.
And Sony was like, "Fine, here's a code. You can download it when you buy the box."
Yeah.
If you really want.
I'd love to see the numbers of that. How many people who buy the box actually bother to download
Paul Feig did it like 13 times just to make it look like somebody actually did it.
Right.
The
when
reason
they
why I
were in the
mentioned
middle of Oklahoma, I'm going, what? Come on.
Middle
Egon
America,
took
baby.
up everything and moved out to the Midwest, and he shackled down there. That made no sense, but
Yeah.
it was cool when she called Aykroyd up and they give like the background of how they broke up and how they're mad at Egon and all this. I thought that was a cool scene, but yeah, it wasn't bad, but it was it wanted me to make. I wanted to go back and watch the original afterwards because they were showing basically clips of the movie, the original. You were watching the original without watching the original. I was like, okay, you didn't really. What was it? Yeah. And then they're all of a sudden they got a shotgun thing in the Ecto One. And go, all right, well, how'd that come out? That wasn't around in the first two. Did you make this implement? And but no, it was way better in the 2016 one, which I'll never watch in my life unless I'm tortured with waterboarding in Gitmo.
I'll give up the nuke codes. If it's giving up the nuke codes or watching Ghostbusters 2016, you're done, America. I'm giving them up because I ain't doing that.
Too.
The thing I mentioned Ghostbusters 2016 because it's the closest thing you'll find. Top Gun Maverick is better, but at least Ghostbusters 16 loved the original and tried to shepherd that along. Did they do it well? That can be up for debate. Top Gun Maverick loves the first film, and it pays homage to it. Actually makes the first film better.
Did you just mean Afterlife just a second ago? You said 2016.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. 2016 is awful. I'll get that on record. No. Ghostbusters Afterlife pays homage to the first one. It loves it loves the fact that it's a part of the Ghostbusters universe. Same thing. You can see it. You know, did they do everything right? No. But at least they loved it enough to try and push it forward. Didn't do it correctly. Top Gun Maverick, and that's because Christopher McQuarrie, who did all the good Mission Impossibles people like, he wrote this film. He went back and rewrote the entire thing to make it work better. So I mean, I know some of you guys are, I hate movies. Fine, that's great. Don't go to it. But if you're considering it, there's one offensive term, unfortunately, at the end. There's an F-bomb if you're worried about that. But overall, there's no sexuality in it. There's something that is implied, and somebody keeps going back and forth with me. You don't see it, so it's fine. But it's enjoyable. I think it's absolutely enjoyable. All right, we're gonna wrap this up. So Ryan, give me your cry room and Saint of the Week.
Okay. Well, Fawaz ended up getting the most obvious cry room that you can possibly get. And there's so many candidates just all around. I mean, for so many different things. But this week, I am going to put, even though if I was on like a couple weeks ago, I might have put him in the saint category. Actually, is Archbishop Cordileone, for the reason that he has, he goes to do, an important and good thing in terms of applying Canon 915 to Lady Moloch, that is Nancy Pelosi. But then, even in his own diocese, he's ordaining somebody whose ordination was previous to the diaconate, whose ordination was previously held up because of a publicly gay social media profile, and then he's endorsed him a lot of other things that just aren't good. It is not even a question of his conforming to my ideal of a bishop or why be a conservative bishop, but it's rather just being a Catholic bishop itself and supporting these things in his diocese that are not good. And then, obviously being displeased when McElroy is appointed over him because he's brown nosing a lot harder than Cordileone is. And so I think, there's all those reasons I'm going to put him in the cry room.
All right. Do you have a saint?
Yes. Since one up was this way, Johnny Depp, believe it or not.
Ah, yes.
Not because he's some great paragon of a human being, but in terms of this trial and getting, trying to get his name back, right? He is one of the things he did, he put out his little Instagram thing just showing a lot of humility and thanks, and even signed off with a Latin, a little bit of Latin, which made me happy. But in general, he's taken the high road on a lot of this stuff. He's not even attacking her or dissing her or anything in his message, just simply putting out a nice, thank you for believing me, more or less. And so I give him, and apparently he's clean now. He's completely sober, gone in treatment, alcohol free. So, praise God for that. If you got a problem with it, getting off it is great. So, so I'm going to, not to say that in all other respects, he's now some wonderful guy, but
in that one, yeah. Also, he torpedoed the Me Too movement. Pound Me Too is now dead in that regard. Steve, Saint and Cry Room.
Cry Room, I'm going to go back a couple weeks ago because we never did it, was Dr. Artis, the snake venom in the water guy.
Oh, okay.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah. I remember when our brother was sending me that video, and I just
the Vatican's putting venom in the water.
Yeah. Thank God that thing is long and gone now, but we didn't throw him in the Cry Room. I think it was a Holy Week or something. Yeah, it was Holy Week, I think, and just no one got around to it. But I couldn't live with myself if I didn't call him out. But yes, and Saint of the Week, I have none off the top of my head. But I'll go with today's Saints for June 2nd, Marcellinus, Eusebius, and Peter. 3 guys that nobody really knows much about, and martyrs of the church. That it's a great read if you read the Garanger for today.
Excellent. All right, my Cry Room, I'm putting Steve Kerr in there because he continues to act like a 4-year-old and doesn't talk about the atrocities in China. While condemning gun owners and all social justice causes. He's just terrible. So my Saint of the Week, if you've noticed my hat has the Sacred Heart of Jesus on there. This is by a guy named JMJ Cat 3 out in California. He makes headgear. He has Ave Maria hats. He has great gear. Absolutely love him. He's a great dude. If you can see that, I'm trying to focus it. JMJ Cat 3 on Instagram and on Facebook. I don't know. He might be still running. As you can see, this card comes with every hat. He has his the Ave Maria there with it. Great dude. Great traditional Roman Catholic. Trying to highlight Catholic guys. If you have kids who want to wear baseball caps and stuff like that, they've got sweatshirts and all this other kind of stuff. Great dude. Check him out. Yep, that's the website. I actually have the one in the corner. I actually have all 3 of those. I have all of his hats because I like wearing baseball hats. And it's a way, if you don't want to support woke corporations, this dude, it's a part-time gig. It's a part-time gig for the guy, much like the Rosary guy as well. So support him and check him out, jmjcat3.com. So that's it for that. All right, folks, thanks for hanging out with us on News from the Pew. Like, subscribe, share, spread the word. Because we're awesome. Anyway, I want to thank Steve. I want to thank Fawaz. I want to thank Ryan for hanging out with us. Thank you for hanging out with us. God bless, and Viva Cristo Rey.
I have 2 shotguns in my home. They're locked in a safe. There's a metal gun case. We live in an area that's wooded, somewhat secluded. And I've said, Jill, if there's ever a problem, just walk out on the balcony and fire 2 blasts outside the house. Buy a shotgun. Buy a shotgun. You don't need a machine gun. You don't need 30 rounds. Buy a shotgun. Buy a double barrel shotgun.